When viewing these sermons that were written by the minister of First Church in Middletown during the Revolutionary War period, I hope we can move to understand the political movement that we're seeing right now to be deeply patriotic, that the Black Lives Matter movement is a perfecting of our democracy and of these ideals that were signed into being on July 4th, 1776. And I want to read to you a portion of one of the sermons that the Reverend Enoch Huntington delivered 1 year before the signing of the Declaration of Independence. He writes, and this first part is problematic because it does speak to the colonizing efforts of the first white settlers that came to the Americas. But it also does speak to the sense of liberation that they were seeking when they traveled here. He says, "We have no other new world on earth to explore or flee to for an asylum from the hand of tyranny and oppression. Here we must stand or fall. Matters have grown to the most alarming crisis. We have no other alternative left us but to submit without conditions to all the demands of unjustly usurped and exorbitant power, or passively be knocked on the head and sacrificed in death, or make a noble, united, and vigorous and virtuous opposition. The last is so universally the resolution of this country, it is a matter of joy and thankfulness, and an omen for good. How willingly do men offer themselves in the service, and what bravery and engagedness our countrymen have shown in this good cause." And so we listen to these words and think about them applying to us now. And I wonder for you, on this day where we lift up these values that are imperfectly lived into in this country, values of freedom and liberation and independence, and I wonder what they mean for you today. Are there things that you are seeking to be liberated from still? What do you need freedom from? I asked this week at tea time on Wednesday from 10:30 to 11. And by the way, we'll be expanding these opportunities of tea time for an evening slot coming up in the next couple weeks so that people who can't make the morning can come another time. But I asked this very question, from what are you seeking liberation? Because I've been curious about these values of freedom and how they fit into our lives today. And people had the most remarkable answers. One simply being freedom from ego, freedom from our own minds, freedom from all that seeks to oppress, freedom from white supremacy, knowing that until all of us are free, none of us are free. And what does it mean to appreciate or experience certain freedoms that we know people in this country or around the world don't have the opportunity to experience? And what does it mean to make those experiences of appreciation, of freedoms, of going out the door and not being afraid of being arrested or killed because of your skin color? What does it mean to pray that freedom for others when you experience it yourselves? So these were really incredible explorations. And we spoke about independence, codependence, and interdependence. So independence is a real value, especially in New England, I think, of churches. So, for example, when the Reverend Kent Salati became our conference minister, he identified that in many Connecticut towns, there are 2 or 3 UCC churches that are independent from each other. And so he started proposing the word interdependent, that we are not separate from each other. We rely on one another deeply in ways that we're not even always aware of. Simply, where do our clothing where is our clothing coming from? Where is the food we're eating coming from? Just these basic ways of being connected, that before we walk out the door, we're connected to thousands of people just because of the way that we live. And this is a deep spiritual truth and a deep physical truth. And so what does it mean rather than independence? You know, independence meant independence from British rule, from the oppressive, unjust forces of a colonizer over the seas. But what do we mean by this now? And we're seeing also this word of the year for us, wholeness, become even more important in this pandemic moment and in this civil rights-like moment, that the good of the whole is something that we need to look out for, even more than the good of our own particular whims or hopes to travel or to see family members who are far away. That we, in some ways, need to make sacrifices for the greater good. And I think in this country right now, we're seeing freedom confused with selfishness, freedom to put other people at risk or in danger. And I wonder if this isn't a misinterpreted concept of freedom. So what are you seeking liberation from? And what prayers of freedom or liberation do you continue to pray for the people in this country and all around the world? These scriptures that were chosen today were the ones that the Reverend Enoch Huntington used in his sermons right before the signing of the Declaration of Independence, this holiday that we celebrate today, or yesterday, over this weekend. And the first is Psalm 124, and it's a psalm or a song of deliverance, thanksgiving for Israel's deliverance. And so Enoch Huntington was using this as thinking about America, or the colonies' deliverance from British rule. The psalmist sings, "If it had not been for the Lord who was on our side, if it had not been for the Lord who was on our side when our enemies attacked us, then they would have swallowed us up alive. Then the flood would have swept us away. The torrent would have gone over us. Then over us would have gone raging waters. Blessed be the Lord, who has not given us prey to their teeth. We have escaped like a bird from the snare of the fowlers. The snare is broken, and we have escaped. Our help is in the name of the Lord, who made heaven and earth." And so this psalm is a really clear psalm of praise, that these people of Israel felt that God is on the side of the oppressed, not of those doing the oppressing. That celebration for having escaped, and these concepts of freedom, we have escaped like a bird. And then this one line from the book of Matthew. And this is the translation that Reverend Enoch Huntington used as commentary for the budding American nation at that time. "Every kingdom divided against itself is brought to dissolution, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand." Whoa. So let these two scriptures sink into you and ring out from history from 1775 and 1776, and even beyond that, the Jesus-following community and the Israelites who wrote these texts and sang them to one another to celebrate God's prayer for us, that we continue to find liberation. And I just wanted to share these beautiful words to close. And these words are from the 1619 project that the New York Times put together. And Nicole Hannah Jones is one of the staff writers of the 1619 Project. And she writes, "The United States is a nation founded on both an ideal and a lie. Our Declaration of Independence, approved on July 4th, 1776, proclaimed that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. But the white men who drafted those words did not believe them to be true for the hundreds of thousands of Black people in their midst. These words did not apply." And so she also writes, following up this quote, "Without the idealistic, strenuous, and patriotic efforts of Black Americans, our democracy today would most likely look very different. It might not be a democracy at all." And so to close, I offer a prayer of thanksgiving from my heart for the ways that African Americans and Black people in this country have been always on the front lines of perfecting this democracy, and we are not there yet, as we know. Just like the kingdom of God, the realm of God, the promise of liberation for all people that Jesus strove to live into and to show us a way toward. We know it's not here yet, and perhaps we won't see it in our lifetimes, but yet we still strive, and we are so grateful for those in all the different manifestations of skin color and sexual orientation, land owning, whatever your gender. We are so grateful for all of those who strive for liberation, for freedom from oppression. And we seek to live into these ideals as a community and as a country today. Blessings to you.